Have you ever heard the term in music one hit wonder? In music, it refers to someone who has a top hit, but only one, and then seems to disappear and never be heard from again. In business, there are also one hit wonders. We do not want to be one. What we're striving for with our business is to make sure that we have hit after hit after hit for a long time to come. This often requires that we provide more than a single service or product. In order to be able to accurately plan, produce, sell, and analyze our business, we must have a clear understanding of what our products and services are. The larger our list of products and services, the more difficult this can be. Take, for example, a company like Amazon. By simply looking at a list of just the books that they offer, nothing else but just the books, it would be virtually impossible to draw any conclusions or offer any high-level insights of what they can provide from a simple list. We instead would need a summary. Well, our company has a fairly simple list of training classes that we can see here. It's extensive enough that we've decided we want to provide for our sales team a simple, compact method of discussing the services. For example, if someone calls and wants to know what type of Excel training classes we offer, we want them to be able to know how many Excel classes we have, the average price for the class, as well as the least and most expensive of the classes. So we've decided to generate this reference for our sales team using a pivot table. We currently have the class list file open from the Chapter 2 Working Files folder. It's a fairly basic list, but it provides the course titles, the application they relate to, their duration, and the retail cost. We'll use this as a source for our pivot table. Depending on which version of Excel we're using, the methods for creating pivot tables are slightly different. In later versions of Excel, there are a couple of very quick and easy tools to let us get started, including the recommended pivot table option and the quick analysis tool. We're going to do this the old-fashioned way, though, so everybody can know how to build a pivot table regardless of what version they have. We simply need to make sure that we have our cursor somewhere in our data, then we'll activate the Insert tab, and we'll choose the pivot table option from the left side of the ribbon. Just a couple of questions, including the need to select our data. But if we already had our cursor in the data, this should be done for us automatically. We can see that this is going to be cells A1 through D22 of the classes worksheet. We'll also leave the default, which is to put the new pivot table on a new worksheet, and all we need to do is click or tap OK. Now we have a pivot table region ready for us to generate our pivot table, and we're going to do that using the pivot table fields list that shows up on the right side of the screen. We are interested in different applications, so we're going to drag the application field from the top of the panel down to the rows section and drop it. The calculation that we're interested in has to do with cost, so we'll also drag that down, but it goes into the values area. Because this is a numeric field, it defaults to sum of cost. Well, that may be useful, but not for our purposes. Just adding up the cost of all of the classes we have is not something we need. We can modify that, though, by clicking or tapping the little down arrow to the right of the field and choosing Value Field Settings. A window should display on the screen that allows us to change the calculation with a single click from sum to count. When we click or tap OK, we can see that this is getting us where we wanted to go. We can see very easily that we have a total of 6 Excel classes, 4 Outlook classes, 3 PowerPoint classes, 2 Windows classes, and 6 Word classes for a total of 21 class offerings. So far, so good, but that's not everything we wanted to know. We wanted to know about costs. So let's drag cost down one more time into the values area. Again, we're going to change the calculation by going to the value field settings. This time, we want to know what the average cost of each of these classes is. In addition, we also want to format the number. So on the bottom left-hand side of the window, we'll click or tap Number Format, choose Accounting from the categories, and move the decimal places down to 0. A couple quick clicks on OK, and we are making definite progress with our pivot table. We have 2 more values that we want to see, and they again all come from the cost field. So we're going to repeat the same actions a couple more times. And again, we're going to go through and make the same types of changes. The third type of calculation we want is the minimum or the lowest cost. We still want it to be in accounting format with 0 decimal places. And one last time, we'll move that good old cost field that we're getting a lot of use out of and change its settings to show us the most expensive or the maximum cost. This is exactly what we wanted for our sales team. Now, with one quick glance, if someone calls and wants to know what we offer for Excel training, they can very quickly say, we have a total of 6 Excel classes. They average $267. The least expensive is $145, and the most expensive is $645. Now, that may sound good to you, but what I know is that last number doesn't sound right. We shouldn't have any Excel classes that are $645. One of the things that pivot tables allow us to do, in addition to just being able to summarize and compact information, is to very quickly assess the status and accuracy of our data. Since this isn't right, it tells us there's something wrong with our underlying data. We can go back to our original class list, and we can identify it fairly quickly. The business class that's listed on row 4 has a retail cost of $645, but this is a typographical error. It actually should be $345. Once we make the change in our source data, the great news is that the pivot table can very quickly be updated. If we go back to it, click anywhere in the pivot table and press Alt F5, or if it's easier, we can just right-click and choose Refresh, we'll see that our numbers fall into line. We now know that the numbers look better when we see that the average cost is $217, with a minimum cost still at $145, but a maximum cost of $345. Of course, we could also add many layers of complexity. For example, we could add duration that would separate out our one-day Excel classes from our two-day Excel classes and those from our half-day Excel classes. But for our purposes, this is exactly what we want to provide to our sales team. We've used a pivot table to summarize a fairly short list of services. As with most activities in Excel, the power of this feature and its abilities becomes even more important and impressive as a list grows. Regardless, a small training company or a large, mega web-based giant can both summarize their offerings in exactly the same way with the same benefits. Pivot tables are often thought of as tools for advanced users, but actually, quite the opposite is true. Pivot tables, as you've seen, are fast and easy to create. We can quickly and compactly summarize tremendous amounts of data, turning them into useful information. They can be used to provide high-level overviews of information for management. They can be used to provide a summary of production for staff. They provide an excellent synopsis for advisors. In fact, if you'll pardon the pun, they can and should be a pivotal part of monitoring, managing, and communicating about your business.